is doing well. So today we have the IL Labs, the room that you just saw me in. It's the IL Labs house, and we also have Justin. Welcome, Justin.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
For sure, for sure. So since we had a delay, I think it's best we just hop straight into the interview. Just wanted to introduce you to the rest of the people here. Maybe we can start off just with how you got into blockchain, how everything started on your journey.
So the person who got me into Bitcoin was Dankrat of the Dank sharding fame. That was in mid 2013. We were working together in Cambridge. We had done the same math degree, and we were in the same college at Cambridge. And we also happened to be in the same small consultancy programming FPGAs for low latency trading. And after that, in December 2013, I started the Cambridge Bitcoin Meetup group. And then Dankrat and I operated a Bitcoin ATM. So it was this machine where you put in cash and you scan your Bitcoin address QR code and it would send you Bitcoin. I also started a Bitcoin company that was building on top of a protocol called Open Bazaar. It was a peer-to-peer decentralized marketplace. So think Uber, Airbnb, without intermediaries, without a company in between, so direct peer-to-peer. And then my company didn't do too well. And in 2017, I was looking for other opportunities in the space. And I watched this video by Vitalik on the data availability problem. So I spent a few weeks thinking about that problem, and I had some ideas, which I emailed to Vitalik, and we had this conversation by email, and a few weeks later, he hired me to join the research team.
Awesome, sounds good. So just to clarify, your journey started in 2017 with Dankrat?
It started in 2013, so over a decade ago.
13.
Yes, and then I joined the Ethereum Foundation in 2017.
Okay, gotcha. That's wonderful. So given the description of the event, we would really like to get a history of Ethereum from your perspective. From the time that you first heard about it, so you joined the blockchain space before Ethereum was made in 2014. What has been the journey like, or what has the journey been like?
Right. So when I first heard about Ethereum, it was basically just a white paper, a very early idea and a very early team, and it sounded so ambitious compared to Bitcoin. And so I didn't think too much of it, in the sense that I was expecting it to more likely than not fail. But then against all odds, the team actually managed to ship Frontier. They almost ran out of money in the process, funds that they had received from the ICO, but they did successfully launch. And then once it launched, I was interested to learn more. Unfortunately, the folks at Open Bazaar were Bitcoin maxis. They were only interested in building this peer-to-peer marketplace on Bitcoin specifically and nothing else. And so when I suggested looking at Ethereum, they were like, no, Bitcoin only. But, in hindsight, it's the obvious, fit, right? You want this expressive programmability to be able to capture stable coins and escrow contracts and identity and reputation and reviews and dispute resolution and all the different components that go into a marketplace. Now, 10 years ago, it was way too early to start a marketplace, but maybe in a few years the timing will be just right. Now, in the very early days, there was very little activity. I remember I tried to participate in a provably fair Ponzi I think that was one of my first transactions. But I didn't even realize, but the transaction reverted. So it was not even a successful first transaction. Like not much was happening in the early days, and then we had these successive kind of waves of interest. There was the big ICO craze that brought Ethereum to the forefront. There was almost a flippening at that point. There was just so much excitement in the ICO craze, and people were basically acquiring so much ETH to participate in the ICOs, and the recipients of the funds were keeping their treasuries in ETH. So there was this massive price appreciation due to that. And then we went through the bear cycle, lots and lots of building, and then there was the NFT craze, I guess, that happened a few years after that. When I joined the Ethereum Foundation, it was a little bit of a shock, in the sense that I thought I was joining this team that was extremely professional, extremely large. It turned out it was just 5 guys, and Vitalik doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and it was very informal and in some sense somewhat unprofessional. But yeah, nowadays the research team has grown to about 30 people. We're much more structured, so we have 4 different sub-teams. We have a cryptography sub-team, an incentive sub-team called the RIG. We have a security sub-team and a consensus sub-team. So I'm part of the consensus sub-team, and in some sense, we work with all the other teams to ship a final product. And more likely than not, that's going to be a specification. So the 2 tools that we use to do our research are number 1, cryptography, and number 2, incentives. And so we work with these two more specialized sub-teams.
Interesting. So speaking of incentives, this is quite interesting. Can you talk to us about the story of EIP 1559 and how that came about and the process of actually implementing it?
Yeah, so the vision from EIP 1559, I believe, started with Vitalik, like several ideas in Ethereum. And I remember, fairly early on, I can't pinpoint the exact year, but something like 2018, Vitalik was pitching me the idea. We were on a metro together, and I didn't really understand what we was talking about. And I think what happened is that this initial early idea didn't catch much momentum. And then what started to happen is that the UX was starting to get so bad on Ethereum, right? Because what happened is that in the very early days there was more supply of block space than there was demand, so there wasn't really a robust fee market. But eventually, once we had this robust fee market, and you wanted to participate on Ethereum, there was 2 outcomes. Either you would underpay, so your gas price was set too low, and you'd end up waiting in the mempool potentially for hours on end, or you'd overpay and you'd feel bad because you'd see that other people were paying less to get in, and so it was not a good UX that you were overpaying. And so some community members, I believe Eric Connor was maybe one of the leading forces, actually went ahead and wrote an EIP. 1559 is a fairly small number in the grand scheme of things. Now we're over 7,000 in the EIP numbering. And there was a lot of skepticism, from various parts of the community, as there always is. But one of the things that really helped was this paper by Tim Roughgarden, who basically formalized the idea and analyzed it from a game theoretic standpoint. And Tim Roughgarden is one of the most respected game theorists out there, mechanism designers. And so that really helped move the ball forward. I personally was not involved in EIP 1559 in the design or the testing or the analysis of it. I actually came in after it was shipped on mainnet, and one of the things that I focused on was the burn aspect and the ultrasound money beam. But really, the original motivation was just an improvement in UX. But EIP 1559 was mind expanding in the sense that it showed us that now there's an opportunity for blockchains to partially capture some of the value that they create. And specifically, we're talking about congestion fees here. And this has actually influenced my research in the sense that maybe there's other value that Ethereum is creating that we could be capturing. And one of the, I guess, most low-hanging fruit is this notion of MEV burn, where not only are you capturing congestion fees, but you're also capturing so-called contention fees as well.
Interesting. And in terms of MEV, I would like to ask about your favorite projects tackling the space. Like, I know about Flashbots, but are there any others that you're excited about?
Right. So, I mean, usually the Ethereum Foundation research team focuses on the layer one. So we focus on hard forks that will improve either the beacon chain or the execution layer. And on that side of things, one of the things I'm looking at right now is this notion called attester proposer separation, which does MEV burn, but all sorts of other things. And I gave a talk at EFCC on this topic. But at the application layer, one of the things I'm very interested in is encrypted mempools. So there's various ways to implement encrypted mempools. You can either use like dumb trusted encryption, like the HTTPS end-to-end encryption. So you have projects like MEVBlocker, Flashbot Protect, and MetaMask also recently came up with their own encrypted mempool. So if, for example, you're a user of MetaMask, your transaction does not get broadcast to the public mempool, more likely than not. It will instead be privately shared with some searchers and builders. So that's good from the perspective of the user because you won't get front run. And it's also good from the perspective of the wallets because they can do the back run and make money. So I believe that MetaMask is making something like 15 ETH per day, from the back runs. And what I'm hoping will happen is that there will be wallets soon that will basically give that money back to the users. So you could imagine a button instead of saying sign transaction and broadcast it says sign transaction and pay me $100, right? Because that's the value that you create in the wake of your transaction. Wow. Now, the big downside with these encrypted mempools, the centralized ones, is that they give a lot of power to the operators, and there's a lot of trust involved, and some amount of fragmentation as well. And so how can we improve it? And there's various flavors of encryption that can really help. One that I'm excited about is to use secure enclaves. So Flashbots has a project called Suave, which you can think of as being an encrypted mempool where you're trusting the hardware manufacturers, and in practice that's a pretty good trust assumption. And then there's projects like Arbitrum that are building threshold-based encrypted mempools. So the idea is that the Arbitrum governance will vote in a committee of 20 operators that they deem trustworthy, and then this committee has an associated public key. I, as a user, I will encrypt my transaction to that public key. The transaction gets ordered before it gets decrypted, and then it takes 14, so basically 2/3 plus 1, or 2/3 out of of the 20 to decrypt it. And so if you have this honest majority, honest and online majority, then you have very high levels of security. And then there's like even more fancy encryption mechanisms. There's something called delay encryption and witness encryption, but those are like much more fancy from a cryptographic standpoint and are not totally ready for prime time today.
So can you talk a little bit about delay encryption? I think I've heard of that, but I'm sure a lot of the people on the call are curious about like that.
Yeah, so the idea of delay encryption is that I have a message and then I encrypt it. And in order to decrypt it, I need to do some amount of work. So think of it like proof of work, but instead of burning energy, I need to burn time. I need to spend time. And so whoever's encrypting the message can choose this time parameter, for example, 5 seconds or 1 minute or 1 hour. And then the recipient of the ciphertext needs to do like 5 minutes worth of work in order to decrypt it. And the way that you mimic the notion of time with cryptography is using inherently sequential computation. So imagine that you have a message, you hash it, and then you hash that, and then you hash that, and then you hash that. The only way to do the computation is to just do one hash at a time. You cannot massively parallelize it. And so you can think of this delay-based cryptography as being the dual of proof of work, which is energy-based as opposed to time-based.
How would you prove that you did the linear hash? Would you create something like a folded snark?
Yeah, fantastic question. So if you want to do like the delay encryption, then all you care about is the plain text, and so you don't need to prove anything to the rest of the world. But there is another very related notion called a VDF, a verifiable delay function.
Yeah.
And here you want to prove to the world that you have done some amount of delay, but you don't want the verifiers to have to redo this work. So option one, which works, is to have a recursive snark that basically is proven as you do the delay. It turns out there's like all sorts of like clever other designs that are more efficient. And yeah, happy to go into this if you're more interested, because this is something that I've looked at about half a decade ago. Like how do we? It turns out that once you have these delay functions, you can have perfect randomness on Ethereum. Today's randomness is called a RANDAO, and the way that it works is that you have a committee of 32 validators. They have each committed to a secret, and then during an epoch, which is 32 slots, they're each one by one invited to reveal their secret. And then what you do is you take the hash of all the secrets that you've received. The problem here is that imagine that you're the last validator in the epoch, so basically validator number 32. You have an option. Either I reveal my secret or I don't reveal my secret. And depending on your action, that's going to lead to a different random number. So even though the final random number is unpredictable, if there's even one honest validator in the epoch, it's so-called biasable, meaning that the validators towards the end of the epoch can basically bias by grinding the various space of possible random numbers. And what delay functions do is that they make it impossible to grind in such a way that you can know what the impact of the grinding is. So the construction is very simple. You take the output of RANDAO, you feed that as an input to the VDF, and then the output of your VDF, which might be, let's say, an hour later in the future, will be your final secure random number. And the thing is that you only have 12 seconds to make a decision as to whether or not to reveal or not reveal your secret. That's how Ethereum consensus works. And 12 seconds is much, much shorter than, let's say, 1 hour. And so you won't be in a position where you can you can compute the output of the VDF in time to make an informed decision as to whether or not to reveal your secret.
Interesting. So 2 questions. Does this ultimately, if it were to be implemented, does it negatively impact settlement time? And then also, I think it kind of contrasts with, there are some theories about single slot finality that were thrown around at Dev Connect. I would love to ask you about, where are we going? Is it more security for longer settlement time, or, as fast as possible?
Yeah, so it doesn't really affect settlement times at all. Let's see. One of the things that it does do is that it increases the latency to get randomness. So right now you can get randomness, every epoch, and so that's the throughput once per epoch, and the latency is 1 epoch as well. But with VDFs, the latency would increase to, let's say, 10 epochs. So instead of 6.4 minutes, it would be kind of closer to an hour. Now it turns out that no one is really exploiting this randomness biasability on L1, so it's not something that has been prioritized. But there are some teams that are trying to build lottery projects that need this really high grade randomness, that are using or at least trying to use these VDFs at the application layer. One of the, I think, most low hanging fruits on Ethereum at the application layer is a world lottery. Like, imagine an Ethereum wide lottery where the winner is provably fairly chosen, where there's basically no fees, which is very different to government lotteries where the fee is about 50%. And it would also be a global lottery. So instead of happening on a continent by continent or jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis, it would be a world lottery. And so I could see it potentially becoming the largest lottery in the world, and it could be a great example of what Ethereum is capable of doing. And it's just like Uniswap, where the UI can be extremely simple. It's just like submit the number of tickets that you want to buy, click buy, and that's it. And the smart contract, once you have this high grade randomness, is just a few lines of code as well.
Interesting. That's really exciting. We have a cool question from Elias in the chat. Don't centralized mempools go against the tenets of Ethereum for decentralization? I think he's mentioning the encrypted mempools.
Yeah. So, in some sense, the public mempool that we have today is great for multiple reasons. Like, one is that it's very transparent. 2, it's permissionless and open. And 3, it's decentralized, right? It's like this peer-to-peer gossip network, and it doesn't even use a blockchain. It's just pure peer-to-peer networking, like BitTorrent. So that's very attractive. Unfortunately, it's lacking 2 things. One is that there is no MEV protection, so there's no front-running protection for users. So if I make a trade on Uniswap, I'm going to get front run, and I'm going to get worse execution because of that. So it's bad for users, and it turns out that it doesn't do the back running. So front running in some sense is an opportunity to lose money, but back running is an opportunity to make money, right? Because you make a transaction and then you create an arbitrage opportunity which you yourself could be collecting. And because of the incentive, because of the back running incentives, basically my expectation is by the end of this year, within the next 12 months, so 12 months from now, the public mempool will be dead. Only, let's say, 10% of all the transactions that land on chain will have been gossiped on the public mempool. Everything else will go through these encrypted mempools, and unfortunately, all of them will more likely than not be centralized, because The more fancy ones take a bit of time to build. Now, the vision of Suave, in some sense, is to get the best of both worlds, is to simultaneously have an open and transparent and decentralized peer-to-peer based mempool, but at the same time have the encryption that protects against front running, and also, thanks to these secure enclaves, have the possibility to have a market of searchers that will compete to provide the best running opportunity for users. So I think, maybe next year or the year after that, we will start seeing the emergence of a decentralized encrypted mempool. I think also quite likely next year we will see Arbitrum's encrypted mempool. Arbitrum, calls it decentralized, but I think it's a little bit of an abuse of language. You could call it federated or you could call it distributed, but really, it's at the end of the day, it's a committee of 20 different entities that are voted in by the Arbitrum governance. But still, it's a massive step forward relative to these centrally operated encrypted mempools for sure.
Interesting. So speaking of encrypted mempools, it would be nice to kind of transition into a lot of the concerns people have about a public blockchain state. Everything on a blockchain is inherently public. There are cool networks out there like Aztec. I think Sui also has some encrypted state capabilities. What are your thoughts on the future of a privacy-enabled blockchain?
Right. So if you go to Orbland, I have an orb there, and I have a detailed written answer for this specific question. But the TLDR is that yes, I think in order for us to be truly mainstream and for blockchains to be a positive force in the world, we want to have this high grade privacy. Unfortunately, there's big technical challenges ahead. And if I were to prioritize one thing over the other, I would first prioritize scalability, reducing fees, as well as having very slick user experience, UX. I think it's kind of the simplest path forward, and it also has benefits in the sense that it makes governments and regulators and the general public, it makes it easier for them, as a first impression to get comfortable with blockchains. Another advantage, for example, of being transparent is that if and when there is a bug, it can be identified. And nowadays, there's just bugs all the time, especially with these very fancy zero knowledge based systems. A very famous example is the Zcash bug, right? So the Zcash bug allowed Ariel Gabizon, the person who identified the bug, to just print as many Zcash tokens as they wanted, and even to this day, no one could know whether or not Ariel actually did exploit the bug or did not exploit the bug. And so today we have all sorts of training wheels, right? We have security committees, we have emergency pause buttons and stuff like that. And all of these training wheels would not work as well if everything was private. And so while I'm very, very bullish on privacy, let's say in half a decade or in a decade's time, I think the tool that it's being used, the SNARKs, I think should first be used to solve scalability. But I think it's still a fantastic thing that there are a few contrarians out there, right? Zach from Aztec has been at it for 7 or 8 years. Like he's a true pioneer, a true explorer, and he has the stamina to see it through for another decade if that's what's required. And I think it is unfortunately what may be required to achieve mass adoption. But I think in terms of effort that's being spent on scalability versus privacy, there's a good balance. I'd say 80% of the engineers are working on scalability and only 20% on privacy. And I think that's today, at least in this point in time, it's a healthy ratio. I think in 10 years' time, you want to flip that, right? You want to have 80% of engineers focused on privacy and only 20% on scalability.
Very nice. I think right now in the state of Ethereum, scalability is a priority, just mostly because people want to stop paying those gas fees. I wanted to go back to the exploit that you mentioned, the Zcash exploit. I think there are some people here who would find that quite fascinating to talk about. I know Ariel is the author of the Planck paper and other papers in the ZK space, but what exactly was the exploit? If you could go into that a little bit.
Right. So there's a whole class of snarks that are becoming more and more rare, but that's how it used to be done back then, where there was a process known as a trusted setup or a ceremony. And basically the idea was that you have a group of people, and you have them each have a secret, and they generate these structured objects, and then you combine these structured objects together, and then if one of them is behaving honestly, meaning that they never reveal their secret, then the trusted setup is secure, and the snarks that are built on top of it are also secure. Unfortunately, what happened is that in the trace, basically in the way that this trusted setup was generated, there were a few extra things that should have been deleted that were not deleted. So basically, there was the secret kind of leaked through the cracks in the toxic waste. And Ariel noticed the critical flaw. Right? So what happened is that the Zcash Foundation, for a period of time, just took down the website that was hosting the trusted setup, because the whole point of the trusted setup is that anyone can verify, right, that it happened, and for a period of time no one could download it, so no one really knew what was going on. There was some sort of fake excuse that they had lost it, or the hard drive was corrupted or something like that. But then a few months later, it was revealed that there was indeed a problem with it, and what happened is that I think they upgraded Zcash to use a completely different proof system and had a fresh trusted setup, and at that point in time, I think they revealed the exploit that was kept hidden for many months.
Interesting, huh? I always find those exploits interesting because to the average person, it might take years to discover, but for experienced people, it would just be a matter of being curious. And that brings me to a question that I want to ask you. So we've brought up people like Dankrad Feist, Tim Roughgarden, Zach from Aztec, and it seems that a lot of them, even though I don't think any of them actually studied computer science, they have backgrounds in academia. And one thing that really inspires people around the world is that Vitalik was able to start Ethereum without a PhD or anything. I would like to ask you about, from your experience being an Ethereum researcher, what are the pros and cons of pursuing academia?
Right. I mean, you're right that I think a lot of these people are self-taught. I believe Zach was a physicist. I think Dankrad was also a physicist. He studied mathematics. I studied mathematics. I don't know what the background of Tim is, but the interesting thing is that. Go ahead.
I think he's an economics and computer science professor.
Right. Now, what was I going to say? So we've created a new branch of academic study, right? Crypto economics, with the combination of cryptography and economics. And so there is no manual, there is no like well-trodden path that we can follow. And so in some sense, people who can be self-taught are self-selected. One of the things that got me interested in Bitcoin initially was that it was at the intersection of many things that I was interested in: the peer-to-peer networking, the cryptography, the economics. And the more I went down the blockchain rabbit hole, the more I realized it was interdisciplinary. There's the whole social and mimetic and political aspect. There's the entrepreneurial aspect of being able to meet builders and build whatever you want. There's all the different people that are kind of ideologists. There's people that there's the libertarian crowd. There's the gold bugs. So every day you kind of learn something new. And I guess one of the funny things is that when I was getting started with Ethereum, I wanted to just do like pure research, and there was like various other things, other professions that I found very, very unattractive. Like HR, for example, or being in sales. And it turns out that during my path at the Ethereum Foundation, I became the HR guy. I became the salesman. I became the guy that I didn't want to become. But in some sense, I appreciated that. Being a well-rounded person and being able to multitask is like one of the key things if you want to be like very successful in the blockchain space. And like one example here is just the number of teams involved in shipping an upgrade like the merge, right? Like you need to do the original research, but then you need to interface with the cryptographers and the mechanism designers. You also need to interface with the security auditors. You also need to interface with the engineers that are like the 5 different teams that have built the clients. You need to go through the all core devs, put your political hat on and kind of sell it to the general public. You need to educate the general public as to what's going on. And so it's I find myself doing something completely different every 6 months. And like one of the things that I'm working on right now is this notion of pre-confirmations and base sequencing. I've been working on this for the last few months, and there's now this Telegram group with 200 people, and we have these regular calls. And to a very large extent, I'm just a cat herder at this point, where I try to organize events, I try to create selling points, I try to get people excited, but like a lot of the heavy lifting is done by the wider community.
Nice. So then, in terms of what we're doing at AOC, I feel like a lot of us feel the same, where we want to create this large community across a humongous continent. Even as we were starting the call, we've seen a lot of people who have the talent and the skills to get into something like a career in Ethereum research. However, for the opportunities presented to a lot of African builders, it's a lot more challenging, right? You don't have access to easy visa easy visa processes. You don't have access to lots of the Ethereum events coming to your town. So I wanted to ask Eric's question as a follow-up to this is, as a core researcher, let's say somebody who is, for example, Nigerian, who wants to build a decorated career in Ethereum research, but doesn't have access to easily going to events like DEF CON. Number one, which aspects of blockchain do you suggest that they focus on? I know I remember you mentioning like the all core devs chats. I've been in those calls. I think they're very helpful. And then number two, what resources would you point them to stay in the loop on what's going on in Ethereum blockchain research?
Right. So, in some sense, the opportunities in blockchain are like maybe more egalitarian than other opportunities. And part of the reason is that everyone pretty much at the Ethereum Foundation within the research team is remote. Like we're all working from home. The way that I found, in some sense, the Ethereum opportunity was just by using YouTube and then emailing Vitalik, so using Gmail. And a lot of our work today happens on Telegram and Zoom. Another really interesting thing is that your value as a researcher or as a developer doesn't depend on where you live, and so you get access to US grade salaries or European grade salaries regardless of where you live. And so that can be especially attractive for the developing countries. Now, in terms of resources that are available, there's ETH Research, for example, which is a great research, and there's various topic-specific Telegram groups. So if you're interested in a specific open problem, more likely than not, there is a Telegram group available. My suggestion is just to not be shy, just knock on doors and ask. A lot of people have open DMs on Twitter, on Telegram, and once you start building your network, once you've got the foot in the door, it should be relatively easy to expand. Now, one of the things I'll say is that I think the Ethereum Foundation can sometimes be a black box just for anyone, and not just for guys and gals in Africa. It's a bit of a unique organization. So right now there's, I think, 300 people at the Ethereum Foundation, and it's split across many teams, something like 20 different teams. And each team is run somewhat independently. And so there's many different styles of recruiting, and many different personalities leading those teams. Now, if I were to make like one concrete suggestion, it would be to like find an open problem where not many people are working on it, so that there will be significant low-hanging fruit, and find something where your skill set means that you're probably going to make an impact. Even to this day, I'd say that talent is one of the biggest bottlenecks. And so if someone comes in and makes a contribution, more likely than not, a few weeks or a few months later, that could lead to a hire. And that is my personal story, but it's also the story of many other people within the research team. Let me give like one example. So there's this researcher, Mike Nuder, who's like an amazing and prolific researcher. He initially wanted to make a contribution to the ultrasound relay. So I'm one of the operators of the ultrasound relay. So he just came in and he said, how can I help? And I pointed him towards this idea of optimistic relaying, which back then didn't exist. And he just implemented the whole damn thing. It took him a few weeks, and he actually just wrote all the code, did all the testing, wrote all the documentation. And then, I was just so impressed that a few weeks later, I offered him a job at the Ethereum Foundation. That the nice thing is that anyone has an opportunity to impress. It's very meritocratic. Just submit a pull request or submit an ETH research post, or whatever it is that creates value. Just do it for free. Take a leap of faith, especially if you're young, right? Like you have potentially a lot of time on your plate. You have nothing to lose. Just try creating value unpaid for a period of time, and have the conviction and confidence that people will notice you and that you'll have opportunities happen from there onwards. I mean, many times in my life, I find myself having opportunities from things that I did where I expected nothing in return. Like I give talks like this, for example, like completely for free all the time, and years later, maybe someone says, hey, thank you so much for talking with me. Like, do you want to be involved in this project? Or maybe I can. There's just so much that stems from reputation, and so the more you can build your reputation, and the more you can give favors to other people and kind of build your karma in some sense, the more opportunities you'll have in the future as well.
Man, that's a great response. Last week, we actually had a session on open source development and how, contributing to a project repetitively can lead to great opportunities. I've seen how open the Ethereum Foundation is as well. I've contributed to the Chiquito project. I have like a closed PR on Wax and an open one on TLS Notary. A lot of the people who create these projects are very helpful. I would like to ask, before we ask this cool question in the chat, how would you suggest someone figure out what interests them in the Ethereum Foundation? For example, there are the cool projects in PSC like Semaphore, but then there are also the other ones that are across the board. Let's say I'm just a general developer. I don't really know what to get into. What kind of helped you find your niche?
Right. So PSC is a great place for developers, but I'd say most of the Ethereum Foundation, at least the people that I interact the most, are not developers. So the researchers, will stop short at writing specifications, and that those can be executable specifications in Python. And sometimes we have a proof of code that's also written in high-level languages like Python. But anytime we're talking about production-grade code, that gets outsourced to the wider community. So the Beacon chain, to a very large extent, Ethereum researchers wrote it, but the 5 teams are all independent from the Ethereum Foundation. They different teams, different countries, different programming languages, different sources of funding. I guess the 2 exceptions at the very least are Geth. If you are like a hardcore Go engineer, and that is a project you find attractive, then feel free to try and contribute. Just as a heads up, Peter has like extremely high standards of quality. So if you're going to contribute, make sure to contribute something of very high value, and that's how you will build a reputation with Peter, who happens to be like one of the leaders of the Geth team. I think the PSC team is like a different ethos. It's a huge team. I think it's something like 100 people, and they have many different projects that they're working on. I don't know exactly how many projects, but on the order of 20 projects. And so it's maybe easier to get started there. But the nice thing is that there's just hundreds of projects that are built on top of Ethereum. So you don't have to get in. If you're a programmer, you don't have to get involved with the Ethereum Foundation specifically. I mean, one of the things that I'm personally interested in is this notion of ZKVMs, which is a recent trend, with SP1, with Risk Zero, with Jolt, and Lita, and Cairo. there's maybe a dozen teams working on this. And then another thing that I'm interested in is hardware acceleration. So I gave a talk at ZK Summit titled Snark Proving ASICs. And there's one of my slides there where there's maybe 12 different companies that are working on this. And then on the base sequencing and pre-confirmations, I also have a slide called the based ecosystem, where similarly speaking, there's something like 12 different teams that are listed there. So opportunities abound to create value. If you want to do like specific research, then yeah, feel free to DM me and happy to take it from there.
Awesome. We will talk about this a little bit more, but I first wanted to ask this question in the chat. How do we better the latency of the Ethereum nodes in underrepresented locations like Latin America or Africa?
Right, that's a great question. So as a relay operator, I have a very good view of latency, and it turns out that having low latency is important for a couple of reasons. One is that it's going to minimize the number of missed slots that you have as a validator, and it also means that the quality of the attestations that you make is going to be greater. So just operating a vanilla validator node will be smoother if you have a good latency. Now, above and beyond kind of the vanilla operations, there's a new topic called timing games. The notion of a timing game is that I'm going to delay the creation of my block as much as possible so that I have more time to accumulate transactions and transaction fees and MEV. And in order to play the timing game optimally, you want to be as close as possible to all the other validators. Now, unfortunately, the validator operators are fairly concentrated in the USA and in Europe, and so there is this natural centralization vector towards everyone coming closer together. The good news is that we can shield timing games from the validator set with something called attester-proposer separation. This is something that I mentioned briefly earlier. There's two designs. There's one called execution tickets, another one called execution auctions. I gave a talk on execution auctions at EFCC. And the basic idea is that as a validator, my main task is to do attestations. The block proposing instead is opened up to a broader market, and I'm not responsible for it. So if there are timing games, which there most likely will be, it's done by sophisticated entities, not by people running on home internet connections in remote geographies. So that's going to help a lot with timing games. But just generally speaking, I think the Ethereum roadmap is geared towards this idea that validators should be as unsophisticated as possible. And there's kind of a couple updates that I want to highlight in addition to attester-proposer separation. One is Verkle trees, which basically mean that, or statelessness more generally, where you don't need to store the Ethereum state. So the 2 terabyte hard drive that I have at home here, I don't need it anymore. And then the next step after that is snarkifying the EVM and the beacon chain. Once we've done that, I can run a validator node on my smartwatch, and it's going to be extremely, extremely lightweight to participate and connect to the Ethereum network.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm excited about the snark process for really light clients. David, let us know if your other questions were answered in that response by Justin. For now, I know you mentioned snarkifying states and Verkle trees, and also your ZK Summit presentation. I think, the last time that we spoke was actually in Athens at the Summit about the chips of, a lot of the hardware coming out to accelerate ZK snarks or circuits in general. So I wanted to ask, since ZK has had such a recent history, one of the first viable implementations was Gross 16 in 2016. I wanted to ask, what was Ethereum like in terms of planning for scalability before ZK became mainstream? And then also just the history of ZK in the space and its trajectory toward becoming this go-to solution for L2 scalability and even privacy.
Right. So when I joined the Ethereum Foundation in 2017, one of the main things that I was focusing on was sharding and scalability. And the basic idea that we had was to leverage honest majority. So we had this very large group of validators, and the idea was, let's sample randomly subcommittees. And if the big group is honest majority, then the committee is with very high probability also going to be honest majority. And basically, if the committee signs off on a block, we can just assume that it's valid. And these blocks would be across many different shards, either 1024 shards or 64 shards. There were various designs. And there's, I guess, a couple of things that happened. One is that we realized that we wanted to minimize the use of honest majority, because honest majority is amazing until it suddenly just breaks and you get a 51% attack. And it's kind of just more elegant to be able to remove this assumption. And it turns out there's two technologies that allow you to remove the assumption. One is optimistic validation, and the other one is snark-based validation. And then the other kind of thing that we realized was that the research team and the core devs just didn't have the throughput, just didn't have the bandwidth to deliver execution sharding. So all the R&D that had to be done with the virtual machines, whether or not we were going with the fraud-proof game path or the snark path, was just way too much work. And we've seen this in practice, right? We have about 10 different L2 teams, each of which have received hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, and they have hundreds of engineers, and it's still an ongoing battle to get to production. Only very recently, for example, that Optimism had fraud proofs, despite working on this for many years. And so there was this kind of this strategic decision that was made whereby, in some sense, we give up, right? Like, we can't deliver execution sharding. Let's just open it up to the market. In some sense, we realized this was the right way forward, also because it's something that we couldn't stop, right? Any team at any point in time could permissionlessly start a roll-up. And so instead of fighting it, let's just embrace it. Now, I guess what has happened for scalability, and I think it also makes sense strategically, is just to fake it until you make it. So at the early days, you just want to launch as quickly as possible, and launching with a centralized sequencer, for example, is the way forward. And in some sense, I think that fraud proofs is also a way of faking it until you make it, right? Because the end game is ZK. And I think as an industry, we're just going to progressively step our game up. And my personal guess is that within, let's say, 2 years, almost all the major rollups will be based on ZK, and hopefully we'll be at a stage where they don't have these really worrisome training wheels, things like security committees. So there's various tools out there that we have to potentially remove the security committees. One is multi-proving, where we have multiple implementations of the snark verifier. So if one of them has a bug, hopefully the others don't have the exact same bug. And the other big idea is formal verification. So using math to basically prove that your verifier is correct. And on that note, I want to shill a competition that the Ethereum Foundation is organizing. So Alex Hicks recently joined the Ethereum Foundation, and he has a budget of $20 million to try and remove bugs from these ZK VMs using formal tools. And so what we're starting with right now is in basically in a few weeks, we're gonna invite people to formally verify the correctness of RISC-V arithmetizations, because a lot of the different teams are using RISC-V as the common platform against which more complex programs will be compiled to. So, there's various teams, for example, that are taking Ref, so Rust-based Ethereum implementation, EVM implementation, and then compiling that down to RISC-V. The Rust compiler does that, can do that natively. And then the RISC-V virtual machine is like simple enough and like fully programmable that it could be the foundation, the glue in some sense for a lot of these ZK rollups.
Interesting. So I've heard about optimism using I think I lost connection a bit.
Yeah. Do you want to repeat you were talking about optimism?
Yes. So I heard about optimism looking into using RISC-0 to basically validate the performance of nodes on the optimism network. So what you're saying is that someone's using formal verification to verify the circuits that are used to prove RISC-V operations on like RISC-0 SP1.
Yes, exactly. And I actually have a table here with all the different teams that are working on this. So there's RISC-0, SP1, Nexus VM, Jolt, Powder, Eigen ZKVM. And I know that Matter Labs and zkSync are also building their own RISC-V ZKVM, and Scroll is also building their own RISC-V ZKVM. So it seems like RISC-V is winning. Like there's a few contrarians. So for example, there's Starkware, that so far seems to be sticking with Cairo, and there's also Lita, which is has a modification of RISC-V, some sort of subset with some other changes. But broadly speaking, it seems that RISC-V is the hot new topic that is gaining a lot of momentum. And standardization gives us multiple things. It means that we can reuse a lot of tooling, like the Rust compiler, for example. Like there isn't a Rust compiler that will compile down to Cairo, but there is one that compiles down to RISC-V. And also all the formal verification work. So for example, I believe that there is a formal semantics of RISC-V in Coq, and there's also a formal semantics of RISC-V in another framework. And so that's all work that has been previously done that we can reuse for free. And then going back to the SNOC ASICs, one of the kind of moonshots and kind of end games is that the witness generation is done on chip. One of the biggest bottlenecks for hardware acceleration of SNOCs is just communicating the witness from the host to the actual acceleration engine, and usually that's done through PCIe, and because those witnesses are so large, PCIe becomes a bottleneck. And so if you do everything on the same chip, witness generation and the FFTs or the MSMs, then you don't have this bottleneck. But in order to do that in a sane way, standardizing on one specific ZKVM will help a lot, because you can basically hard code the ZKVM in the ASIC itself, and not to have to worry about generating witnesses for arbitrary virtual machines, which is a much harder problem to solve.
Interesting. It's cool thinking about where the space is going, deeper into the hardware, deeper into the physical infrastructure. With that, I wanted to ask what your thoughts are and I guess dreams are about DePIN, like physical infrastructure, decentralized physical infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't have many thoughts. I'm a big fan of teams that have tried to solve this problem. Specifically IPFS and libp2p and Filecoin. I like the team and all the infrastructure that they have built. I guess one of the new design spaces that's opened up is restaking. So traditionally, if you want to do something in the DePIN world, you need a new L1. But now with restaking, you have an opportunity to essentially build Filecoin on top of Ethereum. And so I used to believe that there was going to be like a plurality of L1s, each of which specializes in different things. But my new thesis is that there's going to be one internet of value, and more likely than not, that's going to be Ethereum, and like all these specialized DePIN services can be built on top, and there's all sorts of advantages from building on top of Ethereum. You have access to a larger developer base. You have access to more assets, to more users. Just generally like more marketing, right? Like you have the whole Ethereum community rooting for you. You maybe have more VC money or whatever it is. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to see a new wave of innovation through restaking, and that we can build the equivalent of Filecoin on Ethereum, and hopefully a version that is 10 times or 100 times more successful than Filecoin is today.
Wow. So can we dive deeper into that, just about the implications of restaking? I know EigenLayer has been growing a lot. You recently joined the advisory board. It's just huge news going on about EigenLayer. So can you dive deep into that?
Right. So like my research focus regarding restaking is actually to de-risk it. In some sense, restaking is potentially so powerful that it's powerful enough to cause systemic risk to Ethereum. And yes, indeed, I have joined as an advisor. You could say I'm like a restaking alignment advisor, where I focus specifically on the bad things that restaking can create. But having said that, like the analogy that I have is like AI, right? So AI is going to lead to a golden age for humanity in the next 10, 20, 30 years. We're going to have just mind-blowing developments happen at an exponential rate all around us, and our world is going to completely change. But over a 50-year timescale, maybe AI will make humanity redundant and ultimately lead to its demise. And I think we're similarly going to see this short-term golden age that restaking is going to create, partly because of the ability to lock into existing network effects, right? You don't have to start from scratch. The barrier to entry to creating an L1 type service will go down by an order of magnitude. And I think it's also going to be extremely bullish for Ether, the asset. And the reason is that now there's kind of this canonical internet collateral that is used to underwrite all these services. And so demand for Ether should go up dramatically. And like my personal thesis is that Ether, the asset, is designed to be internet collateral. It's not very good as a medium of payment or as a currency because it's so volatile. But it is a fantastic a collateral for various reasons. And I expect we're going to see a huge portion of it, staking natively at L1, but also a huge portion of it being used as collateral in restaking.
Sorry about that. I had a little bit of a connection issue. So that makes where blockchain is going, particularly blockchain and a lot of the other technologies. Do you see MPC and like multi-party computation and fully homomorphic encryption playing a role in the future of blockchain? In particular, a role as impactful as Zk has?
Right. So in some sense, the threshold-based encrypted mempools that I was talking about is MPC, right? You have multiple parties. You have 20 of them, for example, in the case of Arbitrum. And you have some sort of honest majority assumption for safety and liveness. So in the case of Arbitrum, if 7 of them go offline, then you lose liveness, and if 14 of them kind of collude, then you lose safety. And so the great thing about MPC is that it's honest majority on steroids. So if you do have this honest majority, then you can do all sorts of crazy things, and it's kind of privacy preserving. So you can do computation on secrets, which is going to be very, very helpful for privacy down the road. But the big downside is that you're relying on these honesty assumptions, which when they break, they just break catastrophically. Now, unfortunately, with FHE, at some point you need to decrypt, right? And like the cleanest way that I know to decrypt is with a committee. Now, it turns out you can like harden it quite a bit from there onwards. For example, one of the things you could do is you can have a committee where each committee member needs to be running their part of the MPC in a secure enclave. And so now you need to break both the enclave and the honest majority. And you can go even beyond that. If you have K different enclave manufacturers, so you have Intel, AMD, and Amazon, for example, each of which have their own TE, you can have like 3 out of 3 enclaves plus the 14 out of 20 committees. So now if you want to break the system, you need to break 4 things. You need to break Intel, AMD, Amazon, and compromise 14 out of the 20 committee members. So I think in practice, it could potentially be extremely good and extremely robust. I guess one of the downsides of these committees is that they're not credibly neutral, right? Like sometimes they need to be replaced, and so there might be a little bit of a break in composability. One of the things that I've studied a lot recently is this notion called shared sequencing. So I believe that the vast majority of rollups eventually will want to share a sequencer. Now, if Arbitrum creates a shared sequencer using a committee, is Optimism going to opt into it? Probably not, right? Because it's not credibly neutral. It's chosen by Arbitrum's governance, and vice versa. If Optimism has a shared sequencer for its superchain, will Arbitrum opt in? Probably not. And so, in order to get these like truly credibly neutral shared sequencers, you need to try and move away from these committees and from these secure enclaves. And the best solution that I have is basically to use Ethereum itself as a shared sequencer. And this is what is called the based sequencer, because it reuses the base layer, Ethereum L1, as the sequencer. So that's specifically the L1 proposers, who would be given sequencing rights for the various rollups. And when you have a shared sequencer and you have this real-time proving, then magic happens. You have this notion called synchronous composability, where you have the same composability guarantees that you have on L1, where any contract can call any other contract and get an immediate response to that call within the same transaction.
Interesting. So in terms of sequencing, I think a lot of people are interested in the concept of decentralized sequencers. And then also, like you mentioned, a lot of the like trusted execution cloud companies are rather centralized. What are your thoughts on decentralized sequencers and decentralized TEEs?
Right. So I think we're going to see two classes of rollups. We're going to see rollups that will have decentralized sequencing. And I think a lot of the existing rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism have signaled that they want to go down that path. And then there's going to be like a bunch of rollups which for some reason or another will prefer to be centralized. My guess is that these applications won't care so much about composability or security, but they'll care, for example, about uptime, right? Like they will want like very high reliability and this notion called homogeneity. So the problem, one of the problems of a decentralized sequencer is that you have a rotation of the leader, and so because you have different leaders, you have kind of different quality of service at every single slot. So latency might be slightly different, or censorship might be different. Like you can have some slots where you're censored, some slots where you're not censored, and so it's kind of more messy to have a decentralized sequencer. But if you want the high composability and the high credible neutrality and security, then you want to go down this decentralized sequencer path. Now today there's exactly one rollup which has a decentralized sequencer. It's called Tycho. And it is a base rollup. And the reason why the base sequencer is kind of winning out right now as the only decentralized sequencer is because it's so simple. You're reusing all the existing infrastructure of Ethereum L1 from the PBS infrastructure, the builders, the proposers. You can even reuse the encrypted mempools that exist. And so I think and this is in stark contrast to coming up with your own decentralized sequencer, where you have to come up with a new consensus, effectively a new chain with a new token, a new brand, new security assumptions. And there's a bunch of teams that are trying to do that. So there's Astria, for example. There's Espresso. Some people are even trying to use Solana as a decentralized sequencer. I think what will happen is that we'll see experimentation, and we'll see some amount of adoption. So there's going to be like maybe the Polygon ecosystem will adopt one sequencer, and then the Optimism ecosystem will. But if we want like the true like Ethereum wide Ethereum sequencer, I think we're gonna have to wait for the base sequencer to be proven and mature enough. And one of the biggest downsides of the base sequencer is just latency. So we have these 12-second Ethereum slots, which in comparison to the centralized sequencers is way too slow. And so that has led me down this rabbit hole of how do we have faster UX for Ethereum layer 1. And there's basically two approaches. There's Vitalik's favorite approach, which is just reduce the slot times. So go from 12 seconds, for example, to 2-second slot times. That would make the base sequencer so much more attractive. Or option 2, which is what I've been exploring, is this idea of pre-confirmations, where as a user, you know who will be the next sequencer, like who will be the next L1 proposer in the look ahead. And so you can contact them directly and ask them to promise to include you in the block, even though the block hasn't been created yet. So for example, I have a Uniswap transaction. I send it to the sequencer, and the sequencer says, hey, I promise to include you at position number 10 in my block when I do create it. And the price that you're getting is going to be $12 per token. And so from the point of view of the user, you know immediately how your transaction will get included and settled on chain with a latency of 1 ping time, which is on the order of 100 milliseconds.
Wow. Impressive. So we got a question from Huxley Scott. What is your take on the 51% attack in relation to scalability?
So one of the risks of kind of scaling naively is that you increase the node requirement to be a validator so high that you start losing decentralization, and then it becomes easier to 51% attack. And this is one of the worries with Solana, for example. Solana has such high requirements that it only has 1,500 operators, and actually 2/3 of these operators are subsidized by the Solana Foundation, meaning that the Solana Foundation is taking some of their stake and allocating it to these 2/3 of operators, and that makes these operators more profitable as operators. And there's this crazy statistic that whereby if the Solana Foundation were to stop subsidizing, about half of the validators would be unprofitable and presumably would stop operating because they'd be losing money. And so Solana is kind of so centralized in some sense that there's less than 1,000 operators that would organically participate. And so really what you want to do if you want to scale is do it in such a way that you don't compromise the validator set. And there's basically two technologies that are very helpful. One is snarks, where instead of you having to redo the execution, someone else does the execution for you and proves to you that the execution is correct. And so you only have to verify a snark. That is something that is coming, but the main limitation is that you need this low latency proving. Today, proving is on the order of minutes. So we do have ZK VMs, but the proving time is on the order of minutes, sometimes even hours. We need to get it down to less than one slot, less than 12 seconds. And we will get there with things like recursion and hardware acceleration. And then the other super powerful tool is the equivalent, but for data, and it's called data availability sampling. Is this idea whereby I can check that large amounts of data have been published and is available in the Ethereum network, and this check consumes very, very low bandwidth from the perspective of the node doing the check. And so this goes back to the meme of running a validator node on your smartwatch. You consume a tiny amount of bandwidth to do data value sampling, a tiny amount of computation to verify the snark, and you're able to sync up to the chain.
Yeah, nice on low hardware. So one last question before we wrap up. With this question regarding the 51% attack, what are your thoughts on liquid staking protocols like Lido and the risks?
Right. So yeah, my thoughts have evolved a little bit. At this point, I actually think that Lido has done a fairly good job. Specifically, it's made out of many different operators. So there's about 30 operators, each of which control 1% of the validator set. And the idea is that each operator has some high level of independence relative to the DAO. Now, one of the things that we want to make sure is that the governance power that Lido yields on the operators it remains limited. And like one of the best ways to achieve that is basically to remove governance effectively, or to remove almost all aspects of governance. So it's possible that, for example, there could be a few parameters that could be tweaked, like choosing the specific fee that is charged. I believe that today Lido charges a 10% fee, 5% goes to the DAO, the other 5% goes to the operators. And it's perfectly fine if those fee numbers can be modified. But like changes to the contract should be very slow and limited. Another thing that's gonna help a lot in that direction is the notion of dual governance. So right now, the Lido token holders, which to a very large extent is a plutocracy, meaning that there's very few holders who hold enough stake in order to pass changes through, like some of the early team members or some of the large investors. And oftentimes, the voting is a little bit of decentralization theater, right, where you have very few entities that can pass changes. And so the dual governance idea is that what if we allow ETH holders or ST ETH holders to veto proposals that are passed, that are suggested from the Lido token holders. So that's kind of this nice intermediate step, which I think should be happening fairly soon. But the end game is really to remove governance power altogether and fully ossify. The other somewhat worrying thing about Lido is the risk of a smart contract bug. And there's two things here that help. One is just Lindy and the passage of time. Lido now is a few years old and it hasn't been hacked, and it seems to be like fairly robust code. But I think we can go one step further and we can have formal verification that the code is indeed correct. And surely, if we can formally verify ZK VMs, we can also formally verify Lido smart contracts, which are at least an order of magnitude simpler. So I'm kind of optimistic. Like one of the fears that we had initially was that because of the network effects of a dominant LST, that one LST ends up capturing the whole staking market. But that's not something that we're seeing in practice. What has happened is that the dominance of Lido has peaked at around 33% and now has been going down slowly. There's a vibrant competitive market. And even if one single LST were to completely dominate, which I don't think will happen, one of the ideas that we have is called stake capping. So for example, we could limit the amount of stake to 25%. And so what that means is that the pristineness of ETH, the ability to use raw Ether as money, as collateral money for the internet, is not compromised. And this has big consequences in terms of like the monetary premium and the ability for Ether and Ethereum to be successful. So one of my theses is that the success of Ethereum is closely tied to the success of Ether, because you want to have trillions of dollars of economic bandwidth through this collateral. Like maybe the simplest example is stable coins. Right now we have centralized stable coins like Tether and USDC. This is not what we want long term. Long term, we want to have designs like Liquidity or DAI. But it turns out if you want trillions of dollars of stable coins, you're going to need trillions of dollars of pristine collateral, and we don't have that. And the only way for the Ether, the asset, to gain trillions of dollars of value is for it to gain monetary premium. It's very, very hard to achieve that kind of size based on flows alone. And by flows, I mean like EIP 1559 burn or MEV burn. And so it is kind of, in some sense, important for Ether, the asset, to to remain pristine and credibly neutral, for it to be used en masse as collateral. And the more it's used as collateral, the more it can be used as collateral in the future, because the monetary premium keeps on increasing the more it's being used as collateral.
Interesting. So it's good to hear that we're not facing a large incumbent for block approvals. And with that, I think it's a good place to end the call. I wanted to extend my deepest gratitude, Justin. It was an amazing session. We got some good questions answered. If you all want to check out the recording, it will be live on YouTube. Are there any parting words you wanted to leave us, Justin?
No, I just wanted to say, thank you for the invitation. I'm hoping to, be more active with the African community. I understand that there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of excitement there. I unfortunately haven't been to Africa through Ethereum, but I'm hopeful that at some point I'll come there, and I'm looking forward to meeting you on the ground.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. At this point in time, we'll have a couple projects in the African ecosystem actually present. So I think if we can bring on stage, Dennis, if we could bring on stage Emmanuel, Ba, Elo, and Kofi, then they can go ahead and present their projects quickly. Okay. We can have the iExchange team go first. If Ba and Emmanuel are ready.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Lance. Hi, Justin. Super excited seeing the communities in the room as the AI Labs as well as Web3 Club. Super excited. So I'm just going to go ahead to share my screen ASAP. So we get it on. Thank you. Okay, Sun. Okay, Lance, do you see my screen?
I don't see it. I am going to ping.
I think you should
Maybe
allow
it's
it
my
to
access.
come up top. Oh, still, you don't see it? I'm sharing. I think, okay, if not possible, I can just talk about it.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. If not, that's not possible. I think. Okay. Everyone can see and hear you. Oh, okay. All right. Then let me kick it off. All right. Thank you. So I'm super excited. Oh, Lance, you talking to me?
I know, I was just saying I see the slides.
Oh, yep. Great. All right, so super excited to pitch Exchange. All right, so in 2023, a report from Chainalysis, valued the African crypto market to about $117 billion. And one thing about this market is not a single bank in Africa deals with the crypto space. The crypto space here in Africa specifically runs on P2P trading to on-ramp and off-ramp liquidity. But the challenges we've seen in the space is it's been controlled by centralized P2P platforms that don't really open up that African liquidity market to the decentralized world, more of like DeFi protocols, as well as decentralized exchanges currently have had like huge challenges with regulators on the continent. Binance facing its latest ban in Nigeria, which we see this as a very huge problem. And as well as building our tool, we definitely need an on-chain AML and zkKYC tool. And for us, that was a huge kind of a problem for us because we lack an indigenous on-chain ML and zk KYC tool on the continent. So for us at iExchange, iExchange offers traders in this a decentralized P2P platform to convert crypto to fiat, vice versa, using a decentralized wallet. Also, our system has inbuilt on-chain AML and zk KYC solution with off-chain AI monitoring agent for real-time detection and reporting of fraudulent addresses to the blockchain. This definitely helps us to meet compliance. So for us, it's very simple. We are offering the DeFi protocols direct access into the African liquidity market, enabling users to directly on-ramp and off-ramp crypto on their platform, as well as what we have inbuilt in our system. We definitely want to make it available to the African startups. That's our on-chain ML and zk KYC, definitely helping them to also have KYC done on the platform. So here, with respect to the market opportunity, with
Hey,
a
Emmanuel.
source from Chainalysis. Hello, do you hear me?
Just so we wanted to keep them short, so 3 minutes.
Sure,
Can we
sure,
just go straight to the product?
sure. That's okay. Yeah, so I already spoke about this huge market opportunity, and also these are some facts. So here, looking at market competition, definitely we see a huge market for exchange, as companies doing the P2P are not decentralized, have high fees, definitely also not having a decentralized governance, also not integratable with other DeFi protocols, and also don't really have an on-chain ML and zk KYC tool. So that really gives us an edge over our competition. With the product details, we have the on-chain P2P platform. Definitely also have the on-chain AML and zk KYC tool, which I spoke about. And also we're going to have the P2P SDK client that enables Web3 protocols to integrate iExchange. And so to reiterate, it's as simple as iExchange giving traders and DeFi protocols that opportunity to on-ramp and off-ramp crypto on their platform using a decentralized wallet. We believe this is definitely going to be a game changer in the space. With a combined experience of this great team, having over 15 years experience in the space, working with Taring, Tezos, and as well as Ijara, Hurisoft, I could mention just a few that we believe are definitely going to drive this project to a very meaningful, and yes, so access simple. We want to explore opportunities to collaborate with opportunities on the continent, communities, as well as with protocols that are available, as well as we want to connect to all the protocols in, the crypto space to integrate iExchange, and also, yeah, definitely ready to explore funding opportunities. So very clear, our website is up. Definitely going to be launching that on Thursday. But if you're on this call, you have the website up. That's iExchange.global. You can definitely go to the website and explore more about the project. Super excited pitching it here. Thanks, Lance, and to our listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So as Kofi starts sharing his screen, so we at the African Onchain Collective, we wanted to spend this time to showcase a lot of the projects that are doing well in the ecosystem. We've gotten the opportunity to have iExchange at, really most of the team at Accra. They actually won the hackathon, which is amazing. And I think, Emmanuel, if you stop sharing your screen, Kofi can go ahead and start sharing. Okay. And as Kofi is coming on, we have a question in the chat about ETH Safari. Justin Drake, ETH Safari is a conference. It's the conference for this web series, the On-Chain Safari series. We're wondering if you'd be there, or if you'd make plans to be there.
So the whole research team is going to Japan in a few days. We're going to have a retreat, and then we're going to all be going to EdCon. So I will have a very busy few weeks coming up.
It's in September.
Okay, nice. Then yeah, maybe.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep us posted. And now we'll have Kofi with credentials. What's happening, man?
Can you hear me, Lance?
Yes, sir.
All right. Before I go on, thanks again, Lance, and the AOC team for having me on today to pitch. Great conversations today as well, Justin. Really got to learn a lot. And Emmanuel, if you're still listening, I would like to talk to you about like CK, KYC. I'm also exploring that field for credentials. So if you can pass your contact maybe after this chat or so. Without further ado, I'm going to get started. Again, my name is Kofi. I'm the co-founder of Credentials. Here at Credentials, what we do is, or we try to do is help anyone become credible globally, regardless of who you are or where you live. We go to the next slide. So there's a huge problem in emerging markets that we're looking to tackle with our solution, and that is the lack of transparency, trust, and capital when it comes to the market in general, right? The best or the biggest currency or the most important currency when it comes to any business transaction or commerce is trust. And as you can see from other credit bureaus around the East and West Africa, there's a lot of lack when it comes to visibility and data accuracy. Although we have a solution for that, right? Our approach at tackling this problem is on-chain credit reputation. Leveraging our own invoicing platform and APIs, we're looking to use Ethereum attestations to make off-chain data visible on-chain, right? So we're looking to do that, like I said, make on-chain data visible off-chain. Make off-chain data visible on-chain with our platform. Let me go to the next slide. And how we do it is quite simple. So a business enters the credentials platform, creates an account, creates and sends an invoice to a customer. Customer then receives an invoice either via email or SMS. Then they're able to hyperlink and then access map to the invoice that they're to pay on. And whenever they sign on an invoice, create an account or something, an attestation is created on chain, right? We did this to kind of have this be an on-chain receipt for all of your off-chain activity to prove that they are good actors in the community and in the environment when it comes to emerging markets, because there aren't that many opportunities, as we may all know and as we're all here. And doing so, these off-chain receipts are able to prove income from a business, whether that be a large corporation or enterprise or a micro business, right, or micro enterprise. And it allows their customers to prove credit worthiness to all sort of on-chain lenders that are doing lending to either businesses or customers, right? When you look at the statistics, large companies that register in Ghana, where we're looking to actually pilot our project, you're seeing that large enterprises with about 100 plus employees or so, 90%, which is virtually all of them, are reporting that they cannot get access to any credited services. And that is a huge problem because as well on the other end, micro enterprises are reporting the same exact thing. So you're seeing this valley effect, right? And when it comes to credit in Ghana, the space is very early, very fresh. They're not even offering credit scores there yet. So there's a lot of opportunity to kind of create that sort of on-chain credit culture within the market, right? And our ask is quite simple. We're looking to collaborate with other projects, integrate to kind of prove our concept. And we're looking for grant funding as well, because like you all may know, locality is a very important thing when it comes to building on the continent. So right now I'm based in the US. Our partner Alo is also based in the US, although he travels around. We have a team of two developers, one in Kenya, one in Ghana. And we need to get on the grounds, actually talk to companies, locally set up our company as well ourselves, so we can start testing and iterating, so on and so forth, getting our name out to the right audience, right? So again, my name is Kofi from Credentials. If you guys can see in my name, the comment there should have like our website. You can visit our website. Down there, you'll find my socials, Alo socials as well. If you're looking to connect, chat it up about anything in the credit blockchain space, we're your guys. Thank you again, Lance, for having me on. And yeah, cheers.
Awesome. Just two teams in the thriving African Web3 ecosystem. I will definitely provide their information in the chat. But with that, I wanted to say thank you all so much for joining today. We had a great time with Justin and the teams. And good night. See you all next week at the same time. It should be.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks. Bye.